Are these all working? Working? I can't tell. Yes? You're going to be that far? Okay.
The 23rd, that's correct, yes.
We're being very Jewish. Oh, really? Me, Carolyn, too. That's okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sinai Temple. My name is Rabbi Nicole Guzik, and I just want to welcome everyone as this evening we commemorate, we're on the eve of International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And at Sinai, we're all gathering here. Thank you. And for those who are watching at home, thank you. As we honor the memory of the victims of the Holocaust, as we honor our Holocaust survivors, as we continue to build pathways to ensure the stories of the Shoah are not forgotten. But moreover, as this program was described, we are still learning how to build a Jewish legacy of resilience, of strength, of faith. And so Sinai Temple and Atid, and thank you to Brianna Ben Aaron, our Atid director, we, in a beautiful way, partnered with the nonprofit If You Heard What I Heard. Raise your hand if you've heard of this organization. I'm so excited that a few have, and I'm even more excited that others will learn. If you heard what I heard, to remember the past and highlight the resilience of the survivor generation through the lens of their grandchildren. Tonight, I'm joined in conversation with three friends. If you heard what I heard, founder and executive director, Carolyn Siegel. If you heard advisor and CEO of Ethos Giving, Emily Kane Miller. If you heard treasurer, attorney, Sinai Akiba alum, Sinai Temple, Aaron Aftergood. So thank you all for coming and for joining us in conversation. And first, we just wanted to see who is attending this evening. And so we're going to ask you, if you feel comfortable, to raise your hand if you are part of 2G, the second generation, a child of a Holocaust survivor. We wanted to ask you to raise your hand if we have any 3Gs, third generation, grandchildren of Holocaust survivors. Is there a chance that we have any Holocaust survivors? Thank you, everyone, for feeling comfortable to show us who is in attendance this evening. And we're going to ask everyone on the panel, we'll go down the row, to introduce yourself and share a little bit about you, and then we'll get a little bit more into your grandparents' story. You're up.
Hi. It's a pleasure to be here tonight with all of you. My name is Carolyn Siegel, and
I think
it's
our
sorry.
microphones, you have to just really.
Okay, there we go. So my name is Carolyn Siegel, and I am the founder and executive director of If You Heard What I Heard. And If You Heard What I Heard launched in April of 2021. This project was actually started in May of 2020 in response to an anti-Semitic incident. If anybody remembers, there was a synagogue near the Grove that was graffitied at that time. And being the grandchild of two Holocaust survivors, I really felt like our generation is just losing touch with these stories of the Holocaust. Because if you heard what I heard my whole life of what my grandparents went through and how they survived and how they rebuilt, you couldn't not have compassion, and we wouldn't see this level of hate. And so as the survivor generation is dying out, it's become even more imperative for us to carry those stories forward. And so I started this organization, and it's grown immensely. We, as of today, have 40 interviews on our website, including Jenna Schweitzer, who's here with us tonight, one of our newest interviewees. So congratulations, Jenna, on the launch of your If You Heard What I Heard interview. And I, of course, want to thank Emily and Aaron for sharing their stories with us as well. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of bravery to share a story that's both not yours and intrinsically yours at the same time. And I'll kick it over to Emily. So there you go.
I'll just be very quick. I'm Emily Kane Miller. I'm the grandchild of two survivors. And I shared my bubby's story, Yetta Kane, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about that. I'm a mom. I have 2 little ones, one on the way, and just really grateful to be here and super interested and spend a lot of time thinking about this question of legacy and how I can be of service in answering that question.
Hi, everyone. My name is well, I sort of grew up in this building, although it wasn't this building, really. I remember there was a big hole in the ground, and we had a 5K run to raise some money to build this building. But after it was built, got married here. I went to school here, and yeah, I'm the grandson of 2 Holocaust survivors, my dad's parents, who were living until just a couple of years ago. And yeah, I have 3 kids of my own, and really happy to be part of this organization with my friend Carolyn.
So we can either go down the row or we can mix it up a little bit, but we'd love to hear, as you've had the chance to share your grandparent stories, if you'll share a little bit about your grandparent stories. I know it's hard to do it it's impossible to do it in a few minutes, so you can't share the entire story, but it's something, a highlight, an anecdote, something that you carry with your carry from your grandparents as you walk through this world.
Sure. The story that I shared for the interview for this organization was primarily about my grandfather, Edgar Aftergood, who was from a Polish family, although he was born in Berlin. His family moved back to Warsaw. He was born in 1923, so as things were happening in 39, he was a teenager, 15 or 16 years old. And he and his family lived in the Warsaw Ghetto, which was the sort of enclosed area in Warsaw, which became smaller and smaller as people were deported and were passing away. His story of survival is, it's sort of a miracle, and it's he was able to be part of a well, first of all, he was living in an apartment that was connected to a hospital, a children's hospital, because his aunt was a physician, a pediatrician, and because of that, he and his family were able to benefit from some of the resources that were available there. But he was able to join a part of a group that left the ghetto every day to do work outside within Warsaw, sort of public works type projects. And sort of in connection with that, he was able to sort of drift away one day and essentially live in hiding, within Warsaw and the surrounding areas for many months as the war raged. One of the big parts of his life was certainly music, and so maybe I'll just share a bit about the fact that he was part of an orchestra in Warsaw, in the Warsaw Ghetto, that performed. And he actually was a soloist. He performed a Beethoven violin concerto, in concert for Jewish attendees. And one of the amazing sort of artifacts and items that we have from my grandfather, it's not necessarily an instrument from back then, but later in life he remained very involved in chamber music, and he had an instrument, a violin, that our family still has sort of in our family. It's on loan to a young musician right now, which is kind of a beautiful way to remember him. But yeah, maybe I'll pause there and
So, like Aaron, both of my grandparents on my father's side are survivors, and I shared the story of my bubby Yetta Kane, who is still with us. She had her 90th birthday, B'ezrat Hashem, 3 weeks ago, some of the people here were there, which was super cool. And so her story, just to sort of encapsulate it quickly, and there's 30 minutes if anybody wants to watch it on If You Heard What I Heard. She was from a small shtetl in what was then Poland and what's now Belarus called Miażdżol. And her father owned a general store that was adjacent to their house. They had a farm. And so as a result of owning this general store, he needed to go to Vilnius with regularity. So as the war moved, he was able to be in this big city and hear news of what was coming with the Germans, and heard the stories of what happened when the Nazis came to your town and they told you to come and gather for a meeting, and it wasn't a meeting. It was a mass murder. And so when inevitably in 1939 the Nazis came to his town, it was actually their Polish neighbors, the Polish police, that said, hey, things are changing, but it's going to be fine. Everyone, all of the families, all the Jewish men come to the synagogue for a meeting. And he said, in Yiddish, it doesn't smell right. And he and his wife and their then 3 children went and hid. And of course, it wasn't a meeting. It was a mass murder. And that night, my family joined the partisans and went to the woods and fled. One quick story about my bubby, and there are many, and we can kind of go into them. The partisans worked that there was sort of a family caravan, and if anyone's seen like the movie Defiance, there's a family caravan and there was a fighting caravan, and the families couldn't be with the fighters because it would make them vulnerable. And so my bubby, who was blonde and spoke perfect Polish, was selected as a 7-8-year-old little girl, right? To carry notes. And she was told, go to the cemetery, there'll be somebody with a red scarf, give them this note. And if you see anybody or someone comes to you, drop the note and run. And this was her existence for over 2 years as they made their way to the to the Russian border, to the Allies. And they, had elements that the freezing cold, the freezing rivers, no food, illness, all of these things. And on top of it, Germans fighting, along the way, being shot at, having dogs run at them, needing to hide in the freezing water so that their scent wasn't picked up. And so their story of survival was one of just incredible courage. And, I think the word miracle is going to be used a lot tonight. So many miraculous moments that brought them to freedom, first in Siberia and then here in Los Angeles.
So I actually shared my grandfather's story for If You Heard What I Heard, but I think tonight I want to talk a little bit about my grandmother, and I'll explain why in a second. But my grandmother was from a small town in Romania called Mairești. I'm probably saying it wrong, right, Mom? Mairești. And she had blonde hair and light eyes, and she basically, to make a long story short, when the Nazis came into her town, there was a SS officer that started flirting with her. And he asked if she was Orthodox. And because, again, she had blonde hair and light eyes, she said yes, not thinking. And he meant Romanian Orthodox, and she meant Jewish Orthodox. And as soon as she realized what she said, she quickly tried to get out of the conversation. She went and bought a cross necklace. She packed up her, I get emotional talking about this, but she packed up her stuff and she moved to a city where no one knew her. And she nannied for her family for several years. I get so emotional talking about this, hiding her faith. And I remember when I heard that story, and I grew up going to Jewish private school my whole life, I remember asking her, because thank you, yes, I couldn't understand hiding your faith. Here I was, a Jewish kid, living every day Jewish life. And I remember asking her, did you ever say to, the Shema in your heart to yourself at night? Did you ever, think about the holidays? And she said, I was so afraid if even for a second they knew I was Jewish, I would be killed. So when you asked, what's the thing that you take with you today, it really resonated with me, because for me, I'm wearing my Jewish star necklace proudly, and I take every opportunity that I can to celebrate my Judaism because my grandmother couldn't.
So I think if we could expand on that I think we'd be curious to hear about your own Jewish journeys and how your Jewish life is informed by the stories of your grandparents.
Well, I think my my grandparents, my dad's parents, would be the first to say that they were not observant Jews. They were secular. They were secular Jews in Europe, and even after what they went through, I don't. That didn't inspire them to, take up more religious practice when my grandparents met in Paris and eventually came to Los Angeles. But they saw fit to give their children, my father and his siblings, a Jewish education. It's I don't know if you'd call it a joke or a running whatever, but their daughter married an Orthodox rabbi. Their other son, is fluent in Hebrew and Yiddish, and then my father as well is an active member here. And between their kids, they have lots of Jewishly involved, educated grandkids. So, I don't know if really their experience necessarily informed my practice and that of my siblings and cousins, but it's certainly always omnipresent in our in our family, in our practice, that this is obviously important, yeah.
So I would say my Jewish identity is inextricably bound with the fact that I am a G3. When my grandparents met in Los Angeles at a refugee dance, they built a beautiful, very Jewish life together. They both came from families that would have been considered like mitnagdim, like they were Orthodox, but like European Orthodox, not like, black hat payas. And then my Zeta ended up becoming a chazan, and, music actually saved his life in the camps, singing, incidentally. But I always grew up with, grandparents who were very Jewishly involved, very Jewishly oriented. They made sure that all of us went to Israel. We, our families made it a priority to send us to Jewish day schools and Jewish summer camps. And I met Nicole at Hillel, at UCLA, like a decade ago, barely.
Last year.
Last year. So it's so critical. It was so clear to us that it was critical for us to be very fluent and be really clear in understanding who we were as Jews, and that in a way that wasn't mournful, but just like real. Like, you have an obligation. Like, look at our family tree. Look at all of the people who aren't here, and like, how can you make your voice as big as possible to create as much boom as would have been if you had the cousins and like the people that that can't be. And it was hugely motivating, I think, for me and my brothers and my cousins. And I, we'll maybe talk about this a little bit too. It certainly impacts the way that I raise my kids and the way that I think about informing their Jewish identities.
Yeah. It's interesting. Growing up, I always knew that my grandparents were Holocaust survivors. My grandmother didn't talk about it. My grandfather talked about it a lot, often. He wanted me to know what happened to his family. He wanted me to know that our family could have been so much bigger had this event not happened. And I don't think this was his intention, but it was sort of like him instilling in me that this happened to our family. It did also instill in me a pride of being Jewish, and I would watch him daven every day. And I only realized after I did my If You Heard What I Heard interview that he did that as a way of maintaining his connection to his family that was no longer, that he could pray every day. It was something he did with his father. So for me, watching him do that just further instilled in me this pride in Judaism and this level of faith and like what it means to really like pray with your whole heart and soul.
So these are really hard statistics to share with everyone. But in 2020, there was a nationwide survey, and maybe some of you already know this. There were 11,000 interviews done with respondents ages 18 through 39. And the statistic is that 63% of those surveyed, again, the ages 18 to 39, 63% of those surveyed did not know that 6 million Jews were murdered in the Holocaust. Over half of those thought the death toll was fewer than 2 million. Over 40,000 concentration camps and ghettos were established. The respondents could not name a single one. So, as 3G, how do you respond to these statistics? What are we doing wrong?
I'll go. Well, what we're doing wrong is we're not educating in a relatable way. And the answer to that is, if you heard what I heard, to make it short. Expand.
Expand on, because what you just said was, I think, very poignant, that we're not educating in a relatable way. So expand on what that means.
I mean, it's a very big...
And maybe the difference in the way that you were educated growing up.
Right.
Or, I mean, if you feel comfortable.
I mean, it's interesting because I think my education of the Holocaust, one, being a kid in Jewish private school, you're going to hear about the Holocaust. Two, the majority of my friends were, in my class, were 3Gs as well. You know, one of our very close family friend is here, her daughter and I grew up together, is also a 3G. So when you're surrounded by it, you don't really think twice. It's like it's just part and parcel. They taught about it, you know, we learned about it in school, but it was also talked about because we had, like, our grandparents were alive then, you know, so they came into the classroom and they could share their story. So hearing it even from my classmates' grandparents, you're hearing the story. It's relatable because you're hearing a story. And you're hearing a story from someone who, it's someone's grandparent, right? So there's a relatability there because, you know, if my friend Alana's grandparents came in to speak to the class, I was like, oh yeah, they're like my grandparents. There's a relatability. I think what's happening now with the survivor, you know, generation dying out is that where is that point of relatability? It's getting harder and harder for the survivors that are still with us to go in and share those stories. And God bless Bubby, because I know she still does it, which is amazing. But the idea behind, if you heard what I heard, is that if you could hear the story from someone like me, who's maybe a little bit closer in age to the peer group that you're talking about, that we could educate, like, I'm gonna quote Emily's interview. I think you know what I'm gonna say. It's one of my favorite lines in Emily's interview. She says, Bubby's a badass. It's like the best, it's like- I didn't know that was gonna be the line. It's one of the best lines because think about that. Like, you have a daughter who's, you know, she's like gonna be a teenager soon, and that's like vernacular she can relate to, right?
It's an SAT word.
But it's such a good way to relate it.
I agree with everything, you know, sort of ditto. The other thing that I would say, if you look at like the larger landscape of, you know, public education primarily, but all education in the United States, there are tremendous gaps. Like, we're not doing a great, like, the statistics that you just shared are so alarming. And also, like, if you were to ask people to, you know, define more than 3 things on the periodic table of elements, who are 19 to 30s, like, you know, it's like, what do people retain from their education in this country by and large? And I wonder how, while the statistics are alarming, and I don't want to undercut how serious it is, I don't know that it's coming from a place of, you know, deep-rooted anti-Semitism or intentionality. I think that we have a really broken educational system. I only speak for the United States, but I would, you know, imagine it's broader than the U.S. And I think, like, you know, like Imena Nili Mili, like, if we're not going to tell these stories who are, and, you know, everything that Carolyn just shared about the relatability, making it super easy, super accessible, teachers don't have enough time. They're so under-resourced. The fact that they're going to be able to click in to this website, have curriculum, have starter content, have clips that are assigned so that you can make this like a very user-friendly experience. People, you know, our family, my grandparents did Showa tapes. It's amazing. They're like 6 hours long. Right. And you can't like give that to somebody and say, hey, make this relatable. They're like, I gotta like fit in, you know, 20 hours of curriculum for the AP test tomorrow or what, you know. So I think part of it is that. And I think the other thing is the human psychology of wanting to be sad is very limited. So taking people to a place where content is devastating. I mean, the imagining, being able to put yourself in a place where you can understand that humans did this to other humans, and sort of being open to that and having that store in your memory bank is asking a lot of people. And so I think having compassion and empathy for the fact that this content is so hard, being able to package it in a way for people that they can retain it without feeling that it adds to the brokenness in their lives, is something that's, our work as people who really believe in the power of these stories.
Yeah, you said the word packaging, and I think what excites me about the organization is an opportunity to put this education out there in a way that's packaged for, the 21st century, which we're already, more than a fifth of the way done with, and not to take anything away from amazing organizations like the Simon Wiesenthal Center and U.S. Museum of the Holocaust, but we need to be careful about not sort of confining the history to a museum, which, if anybody has kids or teenagers, knows that museums are not always like the most number one priority for these young impressionable minds. And so this organization is only in its infancy right now. We have 40 some interviews, but I think Carolyn is really forward thinking in bringing this content in a package that really speaks to the next generation. So.
I just also want to add, a lot. Emily talks about this in her interview as well. Talking about the Holocaust, and I think what we're doing here tonight is a great example of that. It doesn't have to be this really sad, heavy thing. We are living proof of our grandparents' resilience. They survived. They went on to build amazing, I'm getting emotional again. They went on to build amazing, beautiful lives, and that's to be celebrated. Mm-hmm. And so that's a big part of If You Heard What I Heard Too, is talking about the resilience and talking about how they picked up and talking about the family that they have today.
I'd be curious later to hear some of the emotions and thoughts of those who are in our audience and those watching at home. But what's going on for me right now is I remember growing up in Mission Viejo at Congregation A Lot, and every year we would invite our Holocaust, like many of your congregations, right? Invite our Holocaust survivors to speak and share their stories. And it was almost like a milestone when you would turn 12 or 13, because then you would be invited to come and listen to their stories. And I'm just in awe of the three of you, because I don't mean to put the pressure on you, but what I'm realizing is that my children, and God willing, grandchildren, future generations, you're the speakers, right? They're going to come on International Holocaust Remembrance Day and Yom HaShoah, and they're going to listen to you. And that is quite a remarkable thing, that you have taken their stories and decided to make it a part of your own and ensure the continuity of the idea of never forget, but also to ensure that our lives are filled with faith and blessing and resilience and strength. So I just want to, we're not done, but I just want to thank you for taking on that charge, because I'm just so grateful that my grandchildren will listen to you. Along those lines, I would love to hear, Carolyn, what are the next steps for the organization?
Well, we are very much in our infancy, and I'm very grateful to have, a very strong board of directors, of which Aaron is an integral part of. He's really helped shape and build this organization. So Aaron, I'm very eternally grateful for you. And to Emily for being one of our amazing advisors. Emily has guided me through some pretty crazy ups and downs in building the ship as we're driving it. So Emily, thank you. I'm really grateful for you as well. But yeah, we are a small organization, and so I think, as we've mentioned, as of today, we have 40 interviews on our website, which is amazing. The majority of which I have filmed and edited on my own, and we're getting to a place where we're growing so quickly which is a good thing, but I can't keep doing it on my own. And so being able to get resources for that is a huge priority for us, so that we can expand the work, so that we can get educational programs in place. And I think, I just want to share a trailer from our our current round of 6 interviews, which launched today. As I mentioned, Jenna is a part of that, and we're so honored that we also have actor, writer, director Josh Gad is one of our interviewees, and I'm so grateful that someone with his presence and his voice and level of recognition took the time to share his story with us. It's amazing, and he's such an incredible storyteller. He's captivating, and hearing how important it was for him to share his story because we are seeing so much anti-Semitism, because the Holocaust survivors generation is dying out. It is up to us. It's up to our generation. So yeah, I just want to play a trailer. So I think we're gonna, surprise. Oh, no, I don't know if you did.
Let me tell you the story about a little boy, how at age.
No, sorry, we'll restart that. So this is just going to give an overview of the 6 interviews that launched today, and then if you want to check any of them out more, in depth, you can visit our website at ifyouheardwhatiheard.com. And as I've mentioned, there are 40 interviews to choose from, which is pretty amazing for only having launched in April 2021. Hopefully it'll play. Maybe not. No? Technical difficulties. Yeah, maybe not. So anyway, that's the website. We have a number of trailers on this page. There are 4 trailers for each of the rounds of interviews that we've launched, and I always launch them.
Let me tell you the story about a little boy, how at age 12, his entire world changed.
The Nazis rounded up every Jew from his hometown and put them in a ghetto, and that ghetto was transported directly to Auschwitz. His parents, his aunts and uncles, most of his family did not make it.
My grandmother did not realize that that was the last time she was ever going to see her older brother Shayak or her older sister Fela.
The pain that he felt not being able to sit around a table with his family because they were murdered during the Holocaust.
They would hang him by his feet, and then they would beat him. He said it was just completely inhumane.
There was no food, no water. You would just march day and night, and if you got weak, they would shoot you.
And the Nazis then took a machine gun and started firing and killing everyone who was going up the hill. And somehow my grandfather and his brother survived.
To see how they built something from nothing, so made me feel so fortunate for what they provided us later on.
It's amazing to me that someone can go through such an atrocity, to be starving, to live under a different identity, and to be so close to death and come out of it in such an amazing way.
Alex Gross,
Simon Fixler,
Eugene Schlesinger,
Miriam Rosenbaum,
Hershey Zelevic,
Joseph Greenblatt.
I'm the granddaughter of 2 Holocaust survivors.
I'm the grandchild of 2 Holocaust survivors.
I'm the grandson of 2 Holocaust survivors.
even if it comes down to me, I will make sure that the world never forgets what really happened to them so that it never happens again. My name is Leah Kaufman.
My name is Haley Fixler.
My name is Mara Smith.
My name is Jenna Schweitzer.
My name is Ariel Behrman.
My name is Josh Gad, and if you heard what I heard, you would never forget.
We have time for a few questions. So if you'd like to ask your question to our panel, please. And I think for our streaming purposes, right, I'm gonna bring the microphone to you. I've learned my lesson from past events. You don't need to move.
Hi, thank you so much for sharing. Oh, yes. Thank you so much for sharing what you've put together. My name is Deborah Herman, also a Sinai alum, and the granddaughter of 2 survivors. And I wanted to know how you go about, is there an application process, how you go about selecting your interviewees?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the way it's been, or the way it started actually was, before I even filmed anything, I put up a Facebook post and I said, who do I know that's the grandchild of Holocaust survivors? And within 24 hours, I had 12 responses, Aaron being one of them. I think he was the first. And so the way it's been going is, because I started with people that I know, it's just sort of come through referrals. So Jenna, who I've pointed to a few times tonight, I met Jenna actually through Aaron's sister, Hannah, who's one of our interviewees as well. And because it's just me doing everything right now, that's really been the easiest way to do it. But we do have an interviewee intake form on the site that I welcome you to fill out, or if you know Nicole, she can send me a note. That's always helpful, right? Because there's more context. But there's a field on that intake form that says how did you hear about us? And if you know an interviewee, that is always helpful right now. I will say we have a wait list of over 100, which is amazing. We just don't have the resources yet to get to it. So what I've tried to do is say, okay, I know I have this wait list. Let me focus on the people that are sort of within the network that are known to the organization. I also had somebody who filmed with Steven Spielberg for the Shoah Foundation say something very interesting to me several months ago. She said, when Steven Spielberg was doing this work, we actually filmed a few survivors that weren't survivors. And I was like, who would make that up? It was mind-blowing. So hearing that was even more just okay, right now it has to be kept a little bit more known to the network. So again, if you know someone that can refer you, that's really the best way right now. But the hope is that everyone who has put their name on that list, the hope is that we can get to them. I always say to 3Gs, if you have a story to tell, I want to tell it. And I want us to be the ones to tell it.
And you should know also, which I'm sure is very clear to the audience and to anybody that is listening, that I know from my own peers and many of my, fellow grandchildren of survivors, which I'm sure is a club nobody wants to be a part of, that it's a cathartic experience to be able to do that, especially with many of them no longer around. Yeah. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you.
And I'll just say, if you're inspired, get it on the list.
Yes.
Because these people, every interview should be taped. But you have an iPhone, you have a computer, you have a cousin, you have a sibling. Having these, even if they're only for your own family, captured is so incredible. And one of the things that surprised me when I shared the tape with my cousins was just how grateful all the cousins were to have it. It's just a family resource. And so there's no reason, if you're watching this or people and you're inspired, watch some of the incredible interviews that Carolyn has created. There's pretty clear kind of timeline and questions that she does, and you could absolutely do that in your own, your own family. And I think it's cathartic whether it's on the website or not.
Yeah, nobody should not tell their story because they're waiting to be filmed by us, although it would be an honor to film these stories. Yeah, by all means, I think that's a very big goal for us, is we want you to be able to tell your story, and we want you to feel empowered to tell your story. I actually speak to a lot of 3Gs who are like, I didn't know that much, right? They didn't talk about it. I don't know that much about my grandparents' story. And I always say, you know more than you think you do. So don't be afraid to tell your story.
Good advice. Anyone else? Any other questions? Please.
Hi, I'm sorry if I missed this, but what is the strategy with these videos? Are you planning to get these into the schools, or what is the overall strategy? It's great to have all these videos just like the Shoah Foundation, but as far as a teaching tool, how do you plan to do that?
It's a great question. And, I think, again, we're a startup organization, so we're still figuring it out. I think right now the way these are set up is meant to be docu-series style, for lack of a better comparison. Look, we're not Netflix, but but it's set up in a way, the interviews are capped at 30 minutes. So the idea is that you could, go on and watch 1 or 2 interviews or watch a few interviews at a time and have it be like this docuseries style. So it's I think, education, not just in traditional education, but education for the sake of being curious and wanting to learn even as adults. That said, from an education perspective, I think as Emily mentioned, and I think as Aaron mentioned it as well, like with the Holocaust survivor generation dying out and making these stories resonate with today's youth, especially 63% of adults under the age of 40 don't know that the Holocaust happened. Like, that's a really alarming statistic. So when you have an interview that you can relate to or something you can watch that's 30 minutes, and again, it's coming from someone like us, there's a relatability perspective. And we've been working really hard to get this into the school system. California as a whole has been very supportive. I will say, actually, thanks to Emily, we were connected to Nick Melvoin, who is on the LAUSD school board, who's been a huge champion for this work. Pretty amazing. So we're working to get this into the schools nationwide. I've been working to get in touch with, there's like a national council for Holocaust education, and I've been working to get in touch with them. So if anyone has connections there, please come talk to me. But yeah, the hope is that, actually, I did a webinar with the ADL not that long ago, and the person that led the webinar said, this is the future of Holocaust education. I mean, I couldn't ask for a bigger compliment than to be told that the work that we're doing is the future of Holocaust education. So, yeah.
We are blessed to have the 3 of you. We want to thank you. I feel as if others hear what we heard tonight, then future generations will be able to say never again. So thank you. We are going to ask Cantor Feldman to please come forward, as well as Danny Reichman. Thank you for being here to help lead us in the continuation of our memorial.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be here. And oftentimes when we're recalling the Shoah, we like to have songs in Yiddish or songs recalling the times of the camps, the times of our ancestors suffering through these unspeakable tragedies. But today we wanted to focus on 2 things: hope and miracles. Because in all honesty, that's what this is. This is the hope of a generation continuing. It's the hope of an enduring tradition, surviving, thriving. So our first selection for this evening deals with next week's parasha, Parashat Beshalach, Shabbat HaShirah, Shabbat Shirah, where we commemorate the Israelites crossing the sea and surviving on the other side. From the movie The Prince of Egypt, When You Believe. Many nights we've prayed with no proof anyone could hear. In our hearts a hopeful song we barely understood. Now we are not afraid, although we know there's much to fear. We were moving mountains long before we knew we could. There can be miracles when you believe. Though hope is frail, it's hard to kill. Who knows what miracles you can achieve? When you believe, somehow you will. You will when you believe. Ashir Adonai ki gaoga. Ashir Adonai ki gaoga. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh. קודש נחית וחסתך המזוגלת נחית וחסתך המזוגלת אשירה אשירה אשירה. There can be miracles when you believe. Though hope is frail, it's hard to kill. Who knows what miracles you can achieve? When you believe, somehow you will. Now you will. You will when you believe. You will when you believe. One of the miracles of the Jewish people, of course, is the creation of the State of Israel. And what the State of Israel has done, one of the many things the State of Israel has done, is create a whole new culture of Judaism, expression of the arts, of literature, of philosophy, and of music. And one of the most celebrated Jewish singers from Israel is a lady by the name of Ofra Chaza. And she was known as the Israeli Madonna. She merged Hebrew, English, Arabic sounds, a very Middle Eastern sound, a very authentic way of speaking Hebrew. And she brought this song to fame. The song is called Chai, life. Ken ani od chai. Yes, I am still here. Not only am I still here, Ze hashir shel Saba. This is the song that my grandpa shar etmol le'aba. The song that he sang to my dad. Vehayom ani. Today, I sing the song. Shimu achai, ani od chai, ושעיניי עוד נישאות לאור. רבים חוכי, אך גם פרחי, ולפניי שנים רבות מספור. אני שואל ומתפלל, טוב שלא עובדה עוד התקווה. עובר מזמור מדור לדור כמעיין מאז ועד עולם. אני שואל ומתפלל, טוב שלא עבדה עוד התקווה. חי חי חי, כן אני עוד חי. זה השיר של סבא, שר אתמול לאבא, והיום אני עוד חי חי חי. עם ישראל חי. זה השיר של סבא, שר אתמול לאבא, והיום אני עוד חי חי חי. כן אני עוד חי. זה השיר של סבא, שר אתמול לאבא, והיום אני עוד חי חי חי. עם ישראל חי. זה השיר של סבא, שר אתמול לאבא, והיום אני עוד חי חי חי. חי 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 חי, אני עוד חי חי חי. And of course, the ultimate song of faith, the song of hope. I invite us all to please rise as we will join together in Hatikva, the national anthem of the state of Israel, of our people. And it says, for 2,000 years, we have hoped and have dreamed, and we have not lost hope. Kol od balevav penima, nefesh Yehudi homiya, ulfate mizrach kadima, ayin letzion Sophia. Od lovda tikvateinu, hatikva bat shnot alpayim, liot am chofshi be'artzeinu, eretz Zion Yerushalayim, liot am chofshi be'artzeinu, eretz Zion Yerushalayim.
Thank you so much. You may be seated. I wanted to make sure that I mentioned on February 5th, our religious school is hosting a brunch for our Holocaust survivors. And so if you know a survivor, I know they do a far reach, but if you know a survivor who would be able to attend, please let me know. My email is on the website. You can come up to me after the program tonight, but we would very much like to invite the survivors to come. And this is hosted by our 7th grade. And so as long as we can have this brunch, we would like to. Brianna is going to speak in just a moment, but I just wanted to end with a blessing. May the memories of the victims of the Shoah forever be a blessing. And may the stories of our survivors continue to inspire our everyday. Amen.
So beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Cantor and Daniel and everyone, panelists. I just remember during COVID getting a call from Carolyn saying, I'm going off on my own and I have this idea. And I don't think she even had one interview filmed at the time. And since then, she's come back to us and to Sinai, and it's such a beautiful friendship that we have with Carolyn and with this project. And of course, she's not going to speak to it, so I have to speak to it for her. There's information in the back with QR codes about how you can support the project further. And with that said, I hope that it just, that the conversation continues. Obviously, there are a lot of 3Gs in this room, even just sharing your story amongst each other into the evening or into this week or into International Holocaust Remembrance Day, of saying, you know, if you heard what I heard at Sinai Temple on Thursday night, you know, check out this project. She's being so humble. It's all over Instagram. It's all over the internet and Facebook. It's blowing up, especially with this new round of interviews that just launched today. I mean, I'm surprised Carolyn's even like her phone is blowing up. Like, it's crazy. So a round of applause for Carolyn and for her project. And for all of you for coming. I know what it takes to sometimes get out of the house, especially on a Thursday night when it's dark and there's traffic, and this is obviously so important. So we invite you to have some gelato and cookies and coffee and tea and talk amongst yourself. And don't be a stranger. Come back to Sinai, come back to Atid, come to Shabbat services, talk to us, talk to Carolyn, talk to Rabbi Guzik. We would love to see more of you. So thank you so much, and come talk to us.